This is the B-Team Podcast, brought to you by Jackrabbit Illustrated. The B-Team is presented by Drake's Place in Battle, South Dakota, and sponsored by Jackrabbit Central and Shenanigans in Sioux Falls. Now, here are your B-Team hosts, Brendan and Ben.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in. We are the B-Team Podcast, brought to you by our title sponsors of Cottonwood Coffee Bistro and Drake's Place out in Bowdle, South Dakota, home of the awesome Jackrabbit-inspired menu, the 605 hog, piglets, and everything in between. They're awesome. As always, I'm joined by Ben, our producer, Chad, and we have the very special honor of having Matt Zimmer with us from the Argus Leader. How are you doing today, Matt?
Good. How are you guys?
Can't complain. Not too bad. Have you ever made it up to Belleville, South Dakota to go to Drake's Place?
I don't think so. I probably remember if I had.
At least Cottonwood Coffee and Brookings, probably.
Sure.
Yeah, there you go. Sure. Well, if you haven't, I recommend it. They're both great places. Thanks to them for sponsoring our show. But yeah, we thought it'd be a good idea to have Zimmer on. Obviously, he's the beat writer for Sdsu for Argus Leader. And he even dabbled with some coverage of USD a bit in the spring, I think. And so we figured he'd have some good insights there as well. I guess overall, I mean, we're happy about how the game went on Saturday. I guess what were your takeaways from it, Matt?
I was pretty impressed. I really didn't know what to expect. You know, I had a lot of people asking me all week, who's going to win? What's going to happen? And I kind of defaulted to, well, the Bison are undefeated, and the Jacks have not played well at home. So if you were going to force me to pick somebody, I'd pick the Bison. But I certainly wasn't surprised that Sdsu won that game. They've obviously played that team as well or better than anyone else has. And I think you saw a little bit from them in this game, what you saw from Northern Iowa on Hobo Day. You know, a team that's desperate, a team that has – I don't know if it would be fair to say the Jacks had their backs against the wall because there's still 2 games after. They still could have got into the playoffs had they lost that game. But we all know that this is a team coming off what they did in the spring and the way they started this year. They're not – their goal isn't to go 7-4, 8-3 and just get in. You know, they're still clinging to hopes of, you know, getting a playoff seed, getting, you know, as many home playoff games as they can. And so I think they knew, hey, we got to win this or all those goals are out the window. And they came out and played very well. And I think it kind of changes the narrative of their season. I mean, I still think the fact that they're sitting here with 2 losses instead of maybe just 1 or none is a little bit disappointing. But this is the Valley, you know. I mean, it's not really fair to expect any team to never slip up, to never get beat. And now that they got that big win against North Dakota State, they already have the FBS win in hand. If they take care of business here in the last 2, I don't think they're going to be able to get a top 2 seed. But, you know, getting in that top 4 is probably a possibility, and getting a seed at all is probably a given if they win those last 2 games. So they're still not quite, you know, fully in control of their destiny and, you know, in line to have it set up the way they did in the spring. But like I said, it's kind of put most of their regular season goals kind of back in hand, so to speak.
Yeah, and you mentioned the loss to UNI, and we've talked about how, you know, the silver lining is those happened earlier in the season. And, you know, it's tough to go undefeated in a season, especially in the Valley. And, you know, it could be a good thing for this team. I think it definitely refocused them. They've looked like a better team since that UNI loss. And you mentioned, you know, us having our backs against the wall. I've heard some narrative from the NDSU side of, well, you know, they didn't think it was a big deal, you know, because they had a seed locked up either way. And it's like, you can't tell me that they don't want a top 2 seed. I mean, they win that game, they have a top 2 seed locked up. Now they probably can't, or it's going to be tough for them to get a top 2 seed unless somebody else slips up. So that narrative is trashed, if you ask me.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, NDSU had less at stake, I think. You know, you could say that they, you know, okay, we don't have any losses. We can afford to drop one. Because like I said, in the Valley, I think even North Dakota State, as high as their expectations are every year, I don't think they necessarily go into every year going, we have to run the table. We have to go 15, 16-0. So they're, you know, that one loss. And it's a quote unquote good loss for the Bison. You know, it's to a top 10 team on the road. But yeah, to think that it didn't mean anything to them, or that they didn't have as much to play for or anything like that, I don't buy that, especially when the marker is in Brookings. They don't want it to be there 2 years in a row. I don't think too many people from the Fargo side of it are still trying to downplay that rivalry. Anyone who is not really dealing in reality at this point.
Well, yeah, and you add on there all you heard about. I mean, even on up on their radio station, the mouthpiece for NDSU up there, they were talking about the window and the pictures on the logo, and it's the fall season now, and they weren't quite saying this. They wouldn't go so far as to say that the spring season didn't count and they didn't want to win, because I think they know they'd get kind of crucified at this point by everybody for that. But you heard about how mad this is the real time now because it's the fall and it matters. And then all of a sudden after the game, you had people shouting at you, well, yeah, this is your Super Bowl, yada, yada, yada. I got a kick out of that. But for you, Matt, and just from your perspective, how much, I know obviously there was some desperation on Sdsu side and things like that. How much did the getting healthy for this game make a difference though on at the same time? Because I feel like that made a pretty big impact, especially on defense.
It made a huge difference. I don't know if the sort of Isaiah Davis smoke screen really affected anyone. I think the Bison kind of knew what was going on there the whole time. But Don Gardner, I thought Isaiah would return before Don Gardner. So I was kind of led to believe all that week that Isaiah probably won't play, but he might, and that Don definitely won't play. That was kind of my understanding. And it wasn't like Stig was misleading me. That's kind of where he was sitting at too. And then all of a sudden on Saturday, like, Don's already at the stadium and he gets a phone call saying, hey, you're good, you can play. And obviously that has an impact because Don's a good cornerback. He stepped in, and even playing with the club on his arm, he was very good. He did an excellent job on Christian Watson. He was on him most of the game. They rolled him over into some other coverages, but he played a very good football game. But even beyond that, I'm sure you guys heard Stig's post-game comments of just when they announced in the locker room, hey, Don's playing, he's starting. Stig said the whole locker room just went nuts. And I think that was probably the biggest impact of anything, was just that team kind of needed a little shot in the arm. One thing I'll give the Jacks players a lot of credit for this year is that when they lost those 2 home games in a row, I came at them with a lot of questions. Like, how come you guys are so good on the road and you can't do it at home? How come you seem to trip up at home? None of them dodged that question. None of them tried to say, oh, Zimmer, you're trying to stir something. They were like, yeah, we get it. You're right. We're for whatever reason not playing well at home. And kind of the consensus in answering that question was, we don't know. We're trying to figure that out. And you got some guys to admit that, maybe the pressure's getting to us. Maybe we're making it too big of a thing. We're squeezing the ball too tight, so to speak. Don't have that same swagger. They go on the road and I think they kind of walk in like, hey, what's up? We're coming here to kick your ass. And when they're at home, they just don't have that same swagger. And I think Don coming back unexpectedly like that sort of gave him that. I think it kind of gave him all that, like, hey, we got our dude back, our All-American corner. And I mean, that's obviously not the only reason they won. Pierre Strong going 75 yards for a touchdown on the second play of the game, was obviously also, if that game doesn't start well for the Jacks, who knows how they respond to early adversity, but they get that early touchdown, and there it goes. But I definitely think, getting healthy, sure. And, I expect Isaiah Davis to play on Saturday. That has not been confirmed. I mean, we saw last week, it can go right up to an hour before the game before we find out. But I do expect Isaiah to play. Don's obviously back. Quentin Hicks is back. This team, yeah, they have those 2 losses that might end up sending them on the road at least once in the playoffs, maybe twice. But if they can avoid any further injuries here in the next few weeks, could end up being, the healthiest team in the playoffs, because so many other teams, we always hear the phrase beat up and bumps and bruises, because it's a long season. And by this time of year, everyone's kind of banged up to some degree. Well, if you get a bunch of guys hurt early, the one silver lining of that is then they come back in November, December, and all of a sudden you're healthier than everybody else.
Yeah. And we've talked about, how big getting guys back has been and how much of a boost even getting Davis back is going to be. We talked about how, especially in this game, when we had him, I think it was 27-7 or something like that in mid-third quarter. and we just couldn't go on those long sustaining drives. If we have Isaiah Davis in the game, I think we win that game by 3 touchdowns easy. And I think that's going to be another factor, especially going into the playoffs, being able to put teams away, because I think that's a problem we've had for obviously against SIU and almost against NDSU. So I think that's another big boost that we're going to see going forward here into the playoff run.
Yeah, it was interesting to me in the NDSU game. I didn't necessarily think they got too conservative. I think, in the defense of the Jacks coaches, I think they recognized with the way NDSU was playing offense, like, hey, they're not really quick striking us here. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm watching the Bison in the fourth quarter going, do you guys know you're losing? They were huddling with 2 minutes left, down by 2 scores. Like, they kind of made it easier on the Jacks to some degree. But, I do think they did a good job in that game, a better job than they did maybe against SIU, of kind of balancing, being conservative, but also being smart with a lead. And, it was interesting to me how Chris Oladokin was pretty quiet in that game, and not in a bad way necessarily, but they didn't really put the game in his hands. They ran for almost 200 yards. Chris, I think, threw for 150 or something, but, didn't have any touchdowns, but he didn't have any turnovers either. And to see them kind of say, hey, just don't make any mistakes, because certainly not at all suggesting that it was Chris's fault they lost either of those 2 home games, but he did have turnovers in those games that significantly impacted the game. He did a nice job, I thought, in this game of, might be a little insulting to say he was a game manager, so to speak, but, he didn't make any mistakes. And sometimes, you get in a game like this where it's going to be 2 pretty evenly matched teams, and you don't necessarily have to do something amazing. Just don't make mistakes, and the Jacks didn't make too many mistakes in that game.
Yeah, well, and it was a huge bounce back game for the receivers too, especially against, after the drops they had against UNI. I was worried. I think it was the first pass play, the tight end, I think it was Kraft, dropped, and I'm like, no, not again. And no, they did a great job after that. There were some tough balls that they caught that it was nice to see them bounce back there. No, I don't think they went too conservative in the second half. I just, you'd like to see them put them away. I think we only scored 3 points.
To be fair, NDSU's defense played better in the second half.
For sure.
And they talked about making some adjustments too. So you have to give them some credit.
So on NDSU's game plan, from what I've watched, because you see the NDSU always talks about how we always have a trick play, things like that. And that play to Davis to Strong was, with his touchdown pass, was just so well set up all season. It was cool. But NDSU used to do that too, because I remember just hearing about it. Oh, you stole our trick play. I think it was
the Mangarelli play. Yeah.
Yeah. The Mangarelli play. And all you heard was, oh, they stole that from us. We ran it against you guys. So it's not like,
pretty sure NDSU probably didn't invent that play either. I'm sure they probably stole it from someone else.
No, they're God's gift of football. They invented it. I swear to God, they'll tell you.
Yeah, they invented the power run game too. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it all started up there. But their game plan, especially like the last 2 years, almost seemed borderline overconfident or arrogant in what their line play is going to do for them, where it seemed like their only game plan was to line up and try to stuff the ball down our throats with quarterback option run plays. And then when their offensive line's getting beat up front, because don't want to say we dominated their line, but we definitely didn't lose the trenches.
Right.
And then once they ran out of that option, it was like they had no other ideas of what to do. And I thought that was kind of odd.
I mean, I was talking with the Fargo beat guys after the game was over. We're kind of like, because we were all like, how good are the Bison really? They were 8-0, and 8-0 is 8-0. But I think we all kind of had a hunch that this was not as dominant a Bison team as some of the other ones we've seen. And then watching the game play out as it did, you're like, okay, they're clearly not. Doesn't mean they're not still a good team. Doesn't mean they're not still going to win the national championship. They might. But you could certainly see, okay, there's some flaws here. And the things that we talked about were nothing against Cam Miller or Quincy Patterson, but you go Carson Wentz, Easton Stick, Trey Lance. Maybe Cam Miller will get there, but right now he's not. Right now that is a significant downgrade. Then you look at their ground game, and this was the thing the Fargo guys talked about a lot was you guys have a dude. You have Pierre Strong that you can say, that guy, we can ride him to a win. And when Isaiah Davis is healthy, you have 2 dudes. And they're like, the Bison don't have any. they have this running back by committee, and not saying that the 3, 4, 5 guys they're using aren't good players. But I don't know if that's the way to do it. You got 5 running backs that are all getting 5 carries a game. That just means you got 5 running backs that are all pissed off. None of them are happy with their role at that point. And it just seemed like that almost, I don't want to say it played into the Jacks' hands necessarily, because certainly any of those 4 or 5 guys can, bust a 50-yarder at any time. But that didn't happen. And when that isn't happening, it's a lot harder when you can't say, okay, we haven't broke one. Who's the one guy we can say, let's just go to this guy and get 5-6 yards a pop 15 times in the second half. That's something the Jacks have that the Bison don't. So when you talk about there's a bit of a downgrade at quarterback, they don't have that dude in the running game that the Jacks certainly have and a lot of other teams have. And then I wouldn't suggest the Bison's offensive and defensive lines aren't good, but you talk to almost anyone around the Valley and they'll tell you it's not as dominant as it used to be. And that could not even necessarily be a knock on the Bison. It could be they were up here and everyone else was down here. And it's not that the Bison have dropped. It's that everyone else has come up to their level. I mean, it's hard to stay on top the way that they have for so many years. And I don't think they have that same advantage that they've had before. So I think all those things kind of played together. And then certainly not to necessarily pick on the coaches. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know more than Matt Entz. But their game plan was confusing at times. You talked about I can see how someone would say that appears arrogant. Like they're like, hey, we don't need to have a sense of urgency. We don't need to do any trick plays. We don't need to throw the ball. We don't need to whatever. Well, that didn't work out so well for you. And like I said, you get in the fourth quarter and the guys from the Fargo paper were like practically screaming at the field. Like, what are you doing? There's 2 minutes left and you're down by 10 and you're huddling and running the ball. Like, you're going to lose if you keep doing that, And so, yeah, it's if I'm a Bison, it's funny. We always make fun of Bison fans when they lose one game and kind of overreact and they're all calling for Entz to get fired or whatever. But I can understand why they'd be kind of pissed off. I mean, there was a whole lot of stuff from that game that you kind of watch and go, what are you guys doing? I mean, I certainly thought that many times in the course of the game.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, they're calling for the offensive coordinator's head up there. You talk about, kind of their identities, that run game and how it's just been dominant. And I think the biggest difference for SDSU in these last 2 matchups is our defensive line has just been dominant against them and completely shut down their run game and taken away their identity. And like you said, when they don't have that all-star quarterback to lean on and, to have him run for 150 yards or throw it all over the field, they just become another team. And I mean, that's what they look like. Honestly, it didn't look like NDSU of old on Saturday. It looked like just another Valley team. And so
it's 2 meetings in a row that SDSU looked like NDSU, so to speak. I think you guys know what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was it was really odd watching some of that. Like even in the third quarter when they were trying to methodically go down the field and they're down by 3 touchdowns against a team that's been scoring on them like that. It almost is like, and they haven't really trailed much all year, and for a while now they don't trail many games anymore. And it's almost like they forgot or haven't practiced how to play from behind and how to hurry up their offense and get moving down the field at all. It was really strange. You're right, man.
It reminded me of the Miracle on Ice game when Russia's losing for like the first time ever, and they didn't pull their goalie because they didn't know you could do that because they've never been losing before. That's kind of what it reminded me of watching the game.
That's spot on. That's right on the money.
It's like, you don't have to keep doing this, right? You're losing. You can, yeah. You don't have to huddle. You can run up there and run another play.
Exactly.
I was cheering them on. I thought they were doing great. They could huddle balls.
I'm sure the Jacks coaches were thinking the same thing. Like, okay, fine, take your time. We'll wait for you. We'll be right here.
Yeah. So that I was to say that game, I think it ended up a lot closer than it should have been. I think it ended up being a 1-score game, and I was nervous as all hell for the onside kick, which I hated. I don't know how you felt about those 3 timeouts. I mean, yeah, we got to see their formation, but they also got to see what we were doing too. Mm-hmm. So I didn't understand that at all. What is your take on that?
it's kind of the same with like icing the kicker, and I'm like, just fucking kick the thing, taking the time. I'm not questioning why. I understand why Stig did it, but I'm always of the mindset like just do it, just get it over with.
Hey Matt, you got any comments on how the Valley officiating's been this year? There's been some real head scratchers in different games, and I'm not saying it was one way or the other.
Yeah,
but it seems like this year's been particularly bad.
I think it's just something you go into every game knowing you're going to have to deal with. Because I agree with you. I haven't felt like, oh, this team lost because of the refs or this team won because of the refs. This game's a perfect example. There were bad calls both ways. And I even think Bison fans, the couple that I talked to, were like, yeah, we got screwed on that one, but you guys got screwed on that one too. And that seems to be the case every week. And, the targeting thing every week is just a cluster. And, it's a tough situation because I always look at it this way. NFL fans hate the referees, and those are the best ones there are. So if they suck, then every level further down, it's just going to be worse.
Right.
That I'm not saying that like makes it okay, especially if you do have a really significant call that not necessarily, like I never feel like one call ever swings a game, but it can make an impact. It can lead to a game deciding score. And you don't want that to happen, but it's just kind of one of those, it is what it is. What does anyone think they're going to do about it? Especially given that sort of the nationwide trend within this sport right now is that we can't even find officials because people, and I'm not surprised. People are like, why the hell would I subject myself to this? Like everyone thinks we suck or we do suck. It's a hard job to be good at. I don't know. I mean, you'd like to think replay is what will solve those issues, but we've seen that isn't really the case in the NFL. I mean, there aren't probably as many catastrophic missed calls in the NFL now because of replay. If they really get one screwed up bad, they usually can correct it. And we see that in baseball now too. But nobody wants to be in a situation where we're reviewing every play. The games are long enough as it is. I just think it's kind of hey, this is the reality we're dealing with. And every week, you're going to, Zach Hines had that bad illegal block call on him a couple weeks ago. And last week there was that forward progress call with NDSU. Like, I still can't even understand how they got that one wrong. Cause I don't know if you guys saw it on TV, but from the press box, I could see the FAR official got it right. He was way like 5 yards back. He was like, no, that guy reestablished control and he's over here. And when they came to meet in the center of the field, that the other guy must have, I guess to be fair, he was closer to the ball. So he overruled him. He was like, no, he's forward progress. He's way up there. And there's so many calls that you go, how did you get that wrong? But I don't think it's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, that one was egregious. And that one, when we were up 27-7 and it was late third quarter, if they don't get that first down, they might punt. Right. And, that game is over at that point. And so that was, they went to score a touchdown after that. So, you talk about game defining plays, that could have been one.
Yep.
And it's like you said, it seemed like it was pretty clear. But let's move past that game. Super excited that they won. We do want to get into the USD game. We want to respect Matt's time, and so I guess going into that game, I would be afraid of it being a trap or letdown game. But being that the last time we played them, we lost to them, and then we didn't get to play them in the spring. I don't see that being the case here. I guess what is your take?
I feel the same way. The Coyotes are better than they were, I think, in 2019. But I felt like, I don't know about you guys, maybe it's different when you're a diehard fan, but I felt like in 2019 you could kind of see that one coming. I know the Jacks had a lot to play for that day, but you kind of got the sense that they had gotten themselves to a point where they're like, these guys can't beat us. And even though USD wasn't that great of a team that year, I strongly got a sense from what I was hearing out of Coyote country that week that they had just had enough. They were kind of like, you know what? It's time for us to beat this team. And that's what happened. And like I said, you could just kind of see it coming that they had just sort of made up their mind that this streak ends today. and give them credit. They outplayed the Jacks and they got it done. And the Jacks, I think Stig at least, I don't know about the players, but Stig at least after the game kind of was like, yeah, maybe we weren't really totally ready to play. Maybe we overlooked those guys a little bit. I think that's what happened. And I agree with you, Ben. I don't see that happening this week because of all that's at stake. But largely, like you said, too, it's a rivalry now. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, I get Jacks fans don't ever want to lose to them. But as an impartial observer, you're kind of going, it's about time. We need the other team to win one here to make this a better rivalry. And we have that now. And I think the Jacks are going to come into this game absolutely motivated to – I know they don't really have a traveling trophy or whatever, but, the other thing is, too, look at what USD, the situation they're in right now. If they'd have taken care of business against Illinois State a couple weeks ago, they're in the playoffs right now. Well, now they need a win. They're not going to get in at 6-5. And their last two games are the Jacks at home, and then they got to go to the Fargo Dome. Now, I'm not saying they can't win at the Fargo Dome, but if you're USD, you're definitely thinking, I like our chances at home against the Jacks better than going to Fargo. Well, the Jacks know that too. They know that this is a chance for them to keep their rivals out of the playoffs, get revenge for that loss 2 years ago, and move one step closer to getting a bye in the playoffs. So does that guarantee that SDSU is going to win the game? No, but I agree with Ben. I think one thing we don't have to worry about from the SDSU side of it is not being ready to play or overlooking them or any of those sorts of things. I think they're going to be pretty dialed in.
Yeah, those games, especially down in the Dome until 2019, always kind of felt like the intensity of a rivalry was really one-sided. Like the USD teams played with the passion of a team that was in a rivalry, and the Jacks just kind of showed up like it was a game. And
a lot of those games, even the ones they won, they kind of dicked around for 2.5, 3 quarters a lot. And then at the end, we're like, okay, I guess we got to flip the switch and go win this thing. Yeah, we've seen that several times. There haven't been too many blowouts, certainly in the Dome.
And from what I've seen, heard, and watched, this to me, even though there's the possibility this team might not make the playoffs for USD. This feels like the best, most complete and best team they've ever had, including the Chris Streveler team, because he just kind of covered up a lot of blemishes.
Right.
It feels like this is the most complete team they've ever had. Looking at their defensive statistics, their defense looks incredibly improved. They can run the ball way more proficiently now, and they're not just leaning on a quarterback who, although he's a freshman, he seems like he has a lot more good than he has bad usually.
Yeah, they're pretty balanced. And, I thought going into the season that USD had a chance to be a playoff team. The question was their depth. They're not as deep as SDSU or some of the other teams, but they've stayed, as far as I know, relatively healthy. They lost their corner. They lost one of their key offensive linemen before the season even started. But I think for the most part, they've stayed pretty healthy. And, their top 30, 40 guys are pretty good. And their offensive line used to suck, but they stuck with the same guys for a long time. And those guys have finally shown improvement. Now they're better. The running game, I think getting rid of Kai Henry and replacing him with Travis Tice and those other guys kind of been addition by subtraction. They're much better in the backfield now than they were when Kai Henry was their featured back. Their receivers are good. They have a very good tight end. And then you mentioned on defense, I mean, I even kind of observing every week how much better they've been. I was stunned to realize, looking at the stats, that they have the number 2 scoring defense in the league. They're only giving up 17 points a game. And that was one thing when I talked to their defensive coordinator, Travis Johansson, before the season. He was talking about their defense, and he's like, when people talk about ranking defenses, they rank them by yards. And he's like, I prefer to focus on points. And he's like, we've gotten a lot better at keeping points off the board. Maybe we're not in the top 2 or 3 in the league in how many yards we're giving up, but he's like, we're keeping teams out of the end zone. We're making stops in the red zone. And he talked about that being a bigger point of focus this year. Well, here we are. I don't know where they're ranked as far as yardage wise on defense, but they're number 2 in scoring, and that's how you got to win games. And then on top of that, you can't overlook special teams. They're outstanding on special teams. And I don't know, a lot of times that doesn't make a huge difference unless there's a catastrophic play or whatever, but they've got one of the best punters in the league, one of the best kickers in the league, and their return game's been very good. So if this is a close, evenly matched game, where neither team is making a lot of mistakes or it's back and forth, maybe that's a difference maker for them.
Yeah, I mean, I expect a dogfight down there, honestly. I mean, you hope that we take care of business and, kind of secure a seed possibly. But what do you know what the line is on this game? Do you know what we're favored by?
I haven't seen.
That's
your guys' business, right?
It is.
That's right. That's what we do.
we're favored by 10.
Oh, really? I thought you were actually asking me because you didn't know. I would have guessed like 6 or 7. 10 seems a little high, actually.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit high, being that we're going down there. I thought 6 or 7 would have been a little more accurate. So hopefully that doesn't get in our heads. But I guess if you had to pick against that spread, obviously you think you take USD with plus 10?
Well, I don't know. I think Sdsu is going to win the game. Would they cover a 10-point spread? I mean, sometimes there's a close game and then you get a couple late touch. I'm not trying to chicken out. I don't know. Like I said, I'd set the spread at 6 or 7. I do think the Jacks are going to win. If they cover a 10-point spread, that means they played pretty well.
Yep. Yeah.
I would agree. Well, I guess any final thoughts? I guess for anybody that doesn't follow Matt Zimmer on Twitter, is it at Argus Matt Z?
Correct.
There we go. And then so give him a follow, a very good follow. Puts out some great articles and content. Subscribe to the Argus Leader. That's the only way to get his content most of the time. Thank you very much for being on. Any final thoughts on Sdsu or the USD game at all?
Hoping it's fun. It's funny, for as much as Yotes fans down there are constantly barking at me for being a Jacks homer, just about every one of my friends and family is a USD alum. And so it'll be kind of fun. But they also, this is a little bit indicative of the USD fan base. They're all USD alums, but they're kind of like, oh, whatever, I don't care. So it'll be interesting to see how the game goes and if they're celebrating or not. But like I said, I expect the Jacks to win. Sounds like it's going to be sold out. I have not seen the new configuration of the dome. I'm looking forward to it because it was much needed, and I hope it's a great atmosphere and it'll be fun. I'll be there all day because I'm staying for the high school championship later that night. So I'll be posted up in the dome for a long, long day.
Speaking of sold out, before you go, what is your take on their attendance so far? It's been it hasn't been good.
Shocking.
Honestly, I'm very impressed and surprised because I really thought it was going to be bad again. I thought post-pandemic people were going to be slow to come back, and not even because like they're afraid of COVID or anything, but just we've seen in so many industries and so many things that people are just kind of like, I don't know if I want to spend the money or whatever. And, the last full season, the attendance was not good. They were not living up to the numbers that the school themselves had kind of set is here's the standard. Here's where we need to be. They come back this year, and the lowest attendance they had, I think, was Southern Illinois. They had almost 13,000. Every other game has been 15 or more. I've been very, very surprised and impressed. That's a credit to the Jacks fans, certainly, but I also think a lot of credit to Justin Sell and his staff for whatever they have done to get that raised up this year. Really impressive.
Yeah, I've certainly been impressed about with SDSUs. I was even asking about USDs in terms of how their attendance numbers haven't been very good.
I don't think too many teams in the Valley have seen their attendance go up since the pandemic. I think the Jacks might be the only team.
True. Very true. Well, one more thing. Chad threw up your podcast with Gaskins. Yes. The Nobody's Listening Anyway. That's a very good listen. You guys just hanging out in the bar, usually shooting the shit. That's always pretty fun to listen to. So I've enjoyed that one too. So give that a listen as well.
John appreciates that more than you know.
I really dig it. I've been enjoying
I do too. I like the format
for a while now.
I'm glad. I will pass that along to him. He'll be very, very
outside excited. I enjoy the Vikings talk now because I'm a Packers fan, but otherwise, it's not my favorite. But
yeah, I try to limit that as much. Like I try to let him know. Can you see how bored I am talking about Kirk Cousins again? Let's talk about that else.
Yeah, well, you have to get a little bit bored talking about Nebraska too.
If you listen to this week's show, I finally called him out on it. Like, not everything we talk about needs to remind you of something. Like, you were like, yeah, remember when Taryn Christian is like, yeah, that reminds me of '91 when the Huskers. Like, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
He's still that guy.
Don't need to. Not everything that happens reminds you of something. Anyway.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being on. We appreciate it, and I'll see you down at Vermilion.
All right. Have fun, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
See ya.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Appreciate you.
Well, it's fun.
Artist Matt, everybody. I always think of him as his Twitter tag because I see him on Twitter all the time.
Yeah, it was nice to have him on. Really, I mean, it made the show. It bring it up a notch. Made it much more professional. Like he's good at his job almost.
Yeah, I didn't even bring up that I was drinking chocolate milk. And all the comments, guys. I'm not chugging the chocolate milk, Jim. I saw that. And Brad Koenig bringing up the chocolate milk. I got it for today's game as well. So I did all sorts of stuff. I don't know about you for the marker game to try to reverse some voodoo. The old battle flag got swapped out with a fresh, shiny new one. I got the chocolate milk, but guys, don't you worry.
Hey, speaking of drinks, I was drinking my red beer. Did we get those guys a red beer? Joe,
no, we didn't get a red beer. Damn. Yes,
they did have one of those zing-zangs in a can. Joe had one.
That was a Bloody Mary. Those are Bloody Marys.
Oh, yeah, the different than a red beer, but
come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
But yeah, so speaking of those guys, it was awesome having them here. They were a blast. A lot of fun to hang out with. Very cool of them to come check out our atmosphere. If you want, I would recommend going and listening to their episode from, I think it was Monday this week.
Yeah, it came out early this week.
Yeah, they talked all about their trip, about the good time they had, about how awesome an atmosphere it is. Yeah, Chad's got up on the screen here. It's Believe in FCS, BLEAV in FCS football. If you want to go find it. But yeah, the majority of the episode, they're talking about SDSU, our atmosphere, our tailgating, the game. Chad and Brendan get mentioned quite a bit. So it was cool just having like a national FCS show, come kind of highlight SDSU.
Yeah. And go listen to that episode, folks, because it is hysterical. I was laughing like a lunatic in the truck as I was driving along. But my favorite part was when they were talking about being in the stadium and they're like, it changed our perspective of NDSU fans a little bit. And I was about dying. I'm like, yeah, welcome to our side of the fence. That's how it is all the time.
Their podcast is almost more comedy than it is football at this point, but it's excellent. Everybody should go give it a watch or listen. I mean,
they're on YouTube too. You can watch it.
Yep, you can watch it. Believe is just a whole network of podcasts. I guess there's like 350 different podcasts under that umbrella and whatnot. But no, they do a good job on the national stuff. They're hilarious to listen to. They were a lot of fun at the tailgate. They showed up super hungover, as I'm sure most of us listening to this podcast can relate with after going downtown and visiting the bar scene and then forgetting to eat and then trying to wake up for anything early in the morning. That did not go well for them.
I'm glad they had that take on Brookings downtown on how fun it was, because I try to tell people, I'm like, well, it sounds like a homer pick, but one of my favorite downtowns I've ever been to is Brookings, South Dakota. It's just good. And like, it is. People are like, oh, whatever. It's just because you went to college there. It's like, no, it's fun. And like they said, they don't even have that in Rhode Island. I mean,
right. Well, and that's why I was really curious to see what they thought of that, because they are from Rhode Island now. Joe lives in LA, so they're in those big metropolitan areas and everything like that. But Brookings is so unique with everything right next to each other. You don't have to drive. And they loved it just like all of us do. So that was really cool. was really cool to hear from an outsider's perspective on that sort of jazz. But
Ryan mentioned they commented on the NDSU fans that came to the bar on Friday night. They were all decked out in NDSU stuff, thinking they were cool. They called him out on it. It was good.
And Ryan says Bloody Marys are delicious, probably because he's the one who gave them to them. That is kind of that's a Homer comment there, Ryan. So
way to pat yourself on the back, buddy.
Yeah, that was like it was supposed to be a humble brag he tried there, but I got you. I caught you. So nice try, buddy. You have any other comments on the NDSU game you think we should go over? I know we kind of zipped through like more than we normally would because we had, Matt for only about 30 minutes or so.
I don't. It was great to see the offensive line play really well, the defensive line play really well, our linebackers flying around. Our secondary played better than it had. They needed to. I mean, Christian Watson is a huge talent, and he only had that one big play. So I mean, all around, I was very, very happy with our performance.
Yeah, I think somebody commented earlier. It might have been Jim Poppin or somebody. There was only 3 catches for Christian Watson, which is insane, and then one rush of the football or something, which is, I mean, for as good as he is, to have Don Gardner with a club guard him that well is insane. I did get it right. It was Jim. I mean, that's insane. But I think I was most impressed with the defense, like you said. They really just sucked the life right out of them. And the Hawks, they really responded after having kind of a rough game against UNI. They came out and hammered them. And Ryan, does USD have the D-line depth? I know you said that when Matt was on here, just listening to how Matt talks about them and things like that. I don't know, especially if we have Isaiah Davis back, if we end up in a similar situation to what we had against NDSU in the marker game. I don't know how long USD's D-line can hold out. I'm not sure they quite have that depth yet. I think their top line starters are very good. I just don't think that their depth pieces are quite up to snuff quite yet, and that lends itself to being worn out if we are in control of the game.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the biggest question for me going into this game is whether we'll see Isaiah Davis back. Because as we talked about with Matt, I think that was one thing we were missing in that second half against NDSU is that big bruising back to really take advantage of them being tired and really rip off those big gains, keep the chains moving, and rack up the time of possession. Because we certainly, if there's anything that we didn't do well in that game, it was not bleeding the clock out in the second half. Because I think we only had like 3 possessions in the second half, and they were very short. NDSU, I don't know what the second half time of possession split was, but it couldn't have been good. We only scored 3 points. You gotta. I mean, it is NDSU, and like Matt said, you got to credit to them. They made some adjustments, but if we want to be a championship team, we need to put teams away.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure it was not putting them away. Excuse me, but I do think we had a little bit of trouble sustaining drives, and I don't think that's really a knock on Pierre. He's a phenomenal back. I mean, he's the guy you want the ball in his hands 90% of the time, but when it gets down to that 1 or 2 yard situation, Isaiah's just a lot better at being a guaranteed yardage on that play, like you were saying. But on the same token, I think we just super let off the gas in that second half, and we kind of took everything we were doing in the playbook and put some of that away and just played to. We have a 3 touchdown lead. We don't need to go nuts and gift them any momentum with a interception or anything else goofy happening. So let's just go ahead and try to run this game plan out with something vanilla, and I mean it worked really. I think anybody who watched that game was not nearly as close as the stats or the score will say. I think everybody knows that. If you watch the game, if you didn't watch the game, like I've caught a couple of national podcasts now that didn't really watch the game. You can tell because they're like, well, it was only a 1-score game. No, it wasn't. That was not a 1-score game. That was a 3-score beatdown that Sdsu, I mean, even our defenses were playing conservative and not playing to not give up the big play, which is part of why they were able to get the yards they did. So that's kind of my holistic wrap up of how that game went, I guess.
I would agree. So hard to complain about that. I mean, obviously beating the number 2 team in the nation, they were undefeated rival Dakota Marker. I mean, it's awesome. Like you don't want to complain too much, but again, I mean, we have high expectations for this team, so we're going to point out things that we think they can improve on. So,
right.
With that, I think we should move on to our picks from last week. And
do we want to tell people how we did last week? Is that really necessary? Last week happened. On to this week's picks.
Yeah.
How are these week's picks looking? Somehow we picked opposite a whole pile, and we ended up with the same record.
Yeah, we didn't do great. Well, we only picked opposite twice. We did a whole bunch. We both went 2-4. Not good against the spread. Eastern Washington let us down. I was really surprised by that game. Montana State with a big statement win over Eastern Washington, 23-20. Yep. They covered the spread. They're in line for a top 2 seed if they can take care of business the rest of the season here. That'd be huge for them to have everything go through Bozeman. However, I would like to go to Bozeman because they're a very good team. I think they have a very good defense and a good run game. I just would be very confident against them. UNI lost. They were 16-point favorites, and they lost to Illinois State. That was a surprising game. Illinois State with some life in the second half of the season here. They went and beat USD 2 weeks ago and then beat UNI last week. So I don't know. Maybe they got something to build on for next year, I guess. And UNI finds himself with their backs against the wall once again. They gotta win out to make the playoffs. I think. I don't think they can afford another loss at this point. Youngstown State lost to UND, but they covered the spread. USD whooped up on Western Illinois. They won 42-21, covered their spread. Southern Illinois lost to Missouri State. Southern Illinois finds himself kind of reeling heading into the playoffs a bit. We'll see. I mean, I think that was a good thing for us because they could have potentially been in that seeding conversation and possibly ahead of us. That kind of knocks out another potential seed that could have been ahead of us as long as we take care of business. And then obviously we covered our 2.5-point favorite over NDSU. So we went 2-4, not great. We're 34-38 overall, not terrible, but also not great. Chad, if you want to pull up the top 25 or Missouri Valley standings is fine. Oh yeah, let's go top 25. This is the Any Given Saturday poll, and they've got us sitting above NDSU, which is controversial and surprising. NDSU sitting with their only loss is to us, and we've got losses against Southern Illinois and UNI. I think the argument would be that our wins are as good as their wins, but if you compare losses, it's not really close. So I kind of doubt that the playoff committee is going to see it that way. I would be very, very surprised if we both win out, if we're seated above them. And I think Fargo would absolutely lose their minds if that would happen.
Oh man. Yeah. But that place would burn to the ground.
The meltdown on Bisonville would be a thing of beauty.
I'm here for it. I think it'd be fun to watch. But no, don't see that happening. I think if they take care of business, they should be a 3 or 4 seed in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I like seeing us over them in a poll, the only real justifications that I can see for that is the way we looked in that game is the eye test, and the only other one is if you argue that, and it doesn't seem to be that well known nationally, that we're finally healthy again. Like, I think that's the only argument you can really use when it comes to seeding. I know Matt said, there's a chance at a top 2 seed. For us, I don't really see that at all, unless,
stuff would have to get crazy.
Really crazy. Sam Houston State would have to drop a game, and then JMU would have to drop a game, and
probably
NDSU would have to drop a game. And I mean, this is just saying this is leaving Montana State with just 1 loss. Even if they drop them for all the Wild, I don't think we jump them. So all those things would have to happen. And, Jim Poppins says the Brawl of the Wild would be interesting. It's going to be interesting. And that's looking like more and more likely like that's going to be on College Game Day, which would be sweet. I mean, if there's going to be an FCS game on College Game Day, that's not the marker game. It should be the Brawl of the Wild. So that's going to be cool. But yeah, for a top 2 seed, I think it's really extremely unlikely. For a top 4 seed, it's dubious, I think, but not likely. 5 and 6 seed, very, very plausible if we win out. That's how that sits. Southeastern Louisiana losing helps us immensely. That game was insane. Did you see the stats from that game?
I did not.
Okay, you look them up, because if anybody hasn't heard about this game, this was the most ludicrous game I've ever heard of in my entire adult life. This is a Division I college football game. There was 29 other yards between Incarnate Word and Southeastern Louisiana. And then when you pull this up, Ben, I want you to read the passing yards for each one of these quarterbacks and the score, and then tell me how much fun that 7-on-7 game would have been to watch. It was 55-52. Cole Kelly for Southeastern Louisiana, one of the top 2 people for the Peyton Award, was 50 for 68 for 647 yards passing. Cameron Ward was 34 of 52 for 610 yards, 7 touchdowns and an interception. Incarnate Word had something like 17 minutes time of possession in the whole game and won anyways. And look at these receivers' averages of catches. If you go, or kick returns, but if you go up, receiving, average per catch, 16 yards per catch, 20 yards per catch, 42 yards per catch, 13, 19, 11, and one poor guy got 1 catch for 8 yards and probably is getting like dirty towels dumped on his head for being lame, because good Lord. Like, there was no rushing in this whole game, and it's all passing. They accounted for over 1,200 yards between 2 quarterbacks passing in one game.
Both quarterbacks with 50+ passes is insane.
Yeah.
All passing and no defense. That's right. But yeah, that game was crazy. Southeastern Louisiana was number 6. They lost. There were 5 teams in the top 10 that lost, and 3 of them are Valley teams. NDSU, Southern Illinois, and Northern Iowa all lost, and they were all top 10. Eastern Washington and Southeastern Louisiana, the other 2. So a lot of craziness going on, which I think, like you alluded to, helps our seeding conversation. Like, I agree. I think 5 or 6 is probably what we're looking at. And sorry for the flashing, by the way, if anybody's watching.
You just noticed that? I was going to say something after we were done. You look like you're at a rave.
Right?
Where's your glow sticks?
I was going to ask what the disco light is. Yeah.
My projector's on. There's a commercial. But anyway, and Jim says 10 of the top 25 lost. So lot of mayhem. But yeah, I think that 5 or 6 seed is probably what we're looking at, unless there's some other movement on the top 4 there. It'll be real interesting if Montana State loses to Montana. Do they fall out of that top 4 or do they stay in there?
Right.
Yeah,
well, I don't think you can take them out of the top 4.
Probably
Top
not.
2, probably. I don't think you can take them out of the top 4. I do know everything from the selection of the field to the seeds is going to be mayhem this year. And next week, folks, we're going to have a big guest on if all the stars align for us. So you're going to want to tune in, who's going to know all the stuff about that. But it is going to be an absolute madness. There's going to be so many mad teams because FCS across the board is way up this year. Way up. I mean, I don't think the FCS has been this good in a long time. And boy, and then you got the committee not releasing its seeds like it was supposed to. Like it has for the last 4 years, 5 years. And they just
why would they? Then they'd have to actually be held accountable.
It just decided this, and this is a new committee too, by the way, because they rotate the members through who are on the committee that selects playoff field, and this new one came in and then voted to not do their mid-season or 3/4 of the way season reveal that was voted on prior. It's like saying I undecided for the other people that no, I'm not going to show you that. That's just insane.
That's ridiculous. But anyway, we got to get going here. Let's see. What else did we have? Though the Valley standings will show quickly. NDSU is sitting pretty for the conference championship unless they slip up.
Are they?
If they slip up, it's going to be a crazy tie for second place potentially.
Can Youngstown State do God's work for everybody?
We'll see. Maybe USD can.
I don't want to. You want the last week of the season to be cheering for USD to beat anybody?
It would be entertaining watching somebody try to figure out the tiebreaker
I would
situation.
enjoy. I would cheer for USD in that
because there'd be like I think there'd be like potentially a 4-way tie there, maybe even 5-way tie potentially.
Well, here's the one. Here's something that we didn't mention. One other thing USD's playing for to end this season is to end a Valley Conference schedule over 500 in conference for the first time since they joined, which is just adorable, if you ask me.
I mean,
they've got a shot.
They've got 500 locked up, so congrats already.
I said over 500.
Yeah.
I mean, they made the playoffs with Strevler, they were 500 in conference.
Oh, they've already done that? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they can take the next big step into being a big boy program and go over 500 in the Valley.
Yep.
We'll see if they can.
Not this week. Next week.
That's right. We'll see if they can get that accomplished.
Yes.
All right. Let's get into this week's picks. We've got one out of conference game. Eastern Washington again. They are number 8. They go to number 6 UC Davis, and Eastern Washington, the lower seed, is actually favored by 6.5 in this one at UC Davis.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Now,
do
you know? You saw the news on Eastern Washington. So
yeah. Okay. So the interesting part is that Eastern Washington fired. Well, not fired. He left. He left, or did he fired?
Mutually agreed upon departure.
Okay, so their offensive coordinator is gone.
Dubious.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I've seen, I think, Nebraska thrown around because Nebraska got rid of all their assistants just because they can't fathom that it's Scott Frost's problem.
Right.
So they're going to bring in some new people to help him out. So potentially maybe he's going to Nebraska. I don't know. But anyway, They lost their offensive coordinator, so that'll be interesting to see if that's a bad thing or maybe a good thing for him. Who knows? Maybe they were thinking he was holding him back. I don't know.
See what happens when they don't score 50 points. They get rid of their offensive coordinator.
Right? Yeah, they get mad when they're like, "What? Get somebody in here, score 50 plus." All right. Before we get into these picks, we do have to mention that these are brought to you by Shenanigans. Shenanigans is the place to be if you're not going to watch the USD game, or if you're not going to go down to Vermilion to watch USD game, go to Shenanigans to watch it. The Sioux Empire Staters will have a watch party there. It's a great place to watch a game. Thank you, Shenanigans. All right, back to the picks. Eastern Washington -6.5. I'll go first. I think Eastern Washington bounces back. I think they win by at least a touchdown.
You know what? In this one, it's at UC Davis. UC Davis has a good defense, and we've seen the couple times that Eastern Washington plays good defenses. Weber and Montana State, and even Montana to a degree, they have struggled mightily. So go ahead, give me UC Davis. I have fallen out of love with Barrier, and so go ahead, and I'm going to take Davis. I'm going to take them points. That's a lot of points at Davis.
Yeah, I kind of see this as a get-right game for Eastern Washington. I think Barry will get back to his normal self and throw all over the field. I'll take Eastern Washington there. NDSU is going to try to bounce back after their loss to us at Youngstown State. They are 17.5-point favorites against a Youngstown State team who doesn't have much to play for. And Brendan, what are your thoughts there?
I don't know. Youngstown has proven they can put up a fight. They did beat Missouri State earlier this year. They have played some teams close. I would like to think that my heart wishes that I would take them and that they could go up into Fargo and cause problems. Unfortunately, their style is not conducive to coming up and surprising NDSU. You got to be able to pass the ball a little bit unless you are a high top end offensive line unit like the 605 Hogs. You're not going to be running on them. And I think they're going to come out a little bit angry up there. So give me NDSU. Cam Miller's proven against bad teams he can put up big points.
Yeah, no, I think that too. I think NDSU will have a bounce back game. The only thing potentially is, them coming off that physical game. And I worry about that for us too. We've seen in the past, after you play NDSU and it's a really tough physical game, you have a rough game after that. But I think NDSU bounces back. I'll take NDSU as well there. And then we've got Southern Illinois trying to bounce back at Indiana State, and they are 16.5-point favorites there. I'll go first there. I think this is an easy pick. I think Southern Illinois gets right in this one and wins by at least 21.
Who is this again? I spaced.
It's at Indiana State. Southern Illinois at Indiana State.
Yeah, give me Southern Illinois. I think they're going to blow them up. I don't know why my brain just shut off so far there.
Can we get Zimmer back on here? It's really gone downhill since Zimmer
I
left.
can come in if you need a little help thinking, Brennan.
Oh, wow. People listen to us voluntarily. Nobody's making people listen to us. This is insane.
Brendan, what do you think about this pick? Who's playing again?
What's the game? Are we talking about foosball?
Oh, my God. This is the basketball podcast, right?
We will talk a little bit of basketball at the end, so stay tuned for that.
Yes.
Quickly, we'll finish these out. Illinois State goes to UND. UND is favored by 10.5 at home.
Who is it? No, I'm kidding. They're going to UND. UND is favored by 10.5, though. Illinois State's been playing really well. I'm going to take Illinois State. Surprisingly, they've been on a roll, so why not? You know what? I would love for them to just really crush any tiny hope that was left of the Fighting Hawks before they come down to a cold Brookings the weekend later. So, yeah, I'm gonna take the Deadbirds.
You know, I don't like it, but
Regular milk, man.
I have to agree with you there. I think Illinois State found something, and I think they'll keep it within. They might not win, but they'll keep it within 10. I think. So then a really big game is number 19 Northern Iowa is going to number 11 Missouri State, and Missouri State is favored by 2.5 at home. This is a big game for UNI because if they, like I mentioned, if they lose, I mean, they're going to be on the bubble and probably on the outside of the bubble, in my opinion.
Yeah, if UNI loses, I don't think they're getting in at all. So, unfortunately for Missouri State, what that means is they're getting super desperate UNI. So, give me UNI all day.
Yeah, I think UNI with their backs against the wall, being an underdog, I don't know how you pick against them.
Especially Missouri State, you said is favored by 2.5, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's free money.
I think so too. The only thing is UNI just seems like both of these teams have been up and down this year. So in that manner, it's a really hard game to predict. But I do see UNI winning this one. And then we've got our game, which I mentioned before. We are number 4, Sdsu, favored by 10 at number 18, USD. Thoughts on this one?
Boy, 10 is such a big number. I don't think we've won by 10 in the Dome more than once, if I can remember, since they followed us like, a puppy dog follows dad. But and they're going to be super desperate too. I just don't like the 10 points. I like us to be able to go down there and get a win. Just 10 points is so many in that game. I think historically it doesn't play out that way. I think it will be a dogfight, for lack of a better term. So I'm going to take the points with the Yotes. 10 is just too much. If this was in Brookings, I'm taking 10 points all day. But down there, we haven't shown to play the best in that place.
Somebody clip this and send it to the whole team, and it'll just be...
You want to... All right. You want to clip. If you want a clip to send to the team, Jeff Culhane, the voice of NDSU, on Monday, if you go into their show, he said on there, watch Sdsu go down and lose the USD after they beat us because it's the Bison hangover. And that would be the most Sdsu thing ever for them to lose to USD after beating us, because basically inferring it's our Super Bowl and we aren't capable of winning other games beyond that. So, and he is, the guy does a good job. Don't get me wrong. He does a good job for, being their hype man up there, but he is a USD graduate and an NDSU announcer. So you can imagine how he feels about us.
Well, there you go. Let's go prove Jeff Culhane wrong. On the other hand, I think we see Isaiah Davis return, and it's going to be a fresh Isaiah Davis. We'll be able to give Pierre Strong a little bit of a break, and I think we get up on USD early. I think we've got confidence coming out of this NDSU game, and then I think we pound the ball, and I don't think they're able to stop us. So I'm going to take, they won 42-21 this week. I'm going to take us winning 35-21 down there. I do think that they'll have some success with Camp in the passing game. And like you said, they're against the ropes. They're going to be amped up. So I think they'll get some points on us. I think we'll get back over that 40 mark on offense. And I just don't see anybody scoring more than 40 against us outside of Southern Illinois in overtime. So that's my take. I'm gonna take SDSU -10.
Yeah, I mean, I want us to go in there and absolutely steamroll them in their house and snatch the soul right out of them because I am sick and tired. I mean, they're dumb. They got fans dumb enough to say it's been X amount of days since SDSU's beaten USD. Well, yeah, when you take a year off, I suppose that would be a big number. And you know what? They probably should savor that since it had been 20 years since the last one. And I'm not good at math, but that's a lot of days. So shut up. And I really hope we absolutely steamroll them because, God, their fans are obnoxious. It's like when your kid brother like beats you that one time at a video game and then just will not shut up about it forever.
Yeah, so myself, Brendan, and Chad, I believe we'll all be down there, and
Yes.
so we haven't quite figured it out yet, but I think we're gonna do something where we'll tell people where we'll be at in some lot down there, so that if you're looking for somebody to hang out with, if you're going down to the game, you can come hang out with us. We'll send something out about that.
Yeah, typically we tailgate in that lot that's just to the west and kind of on the north side of the dome. That's where they allow visitors. So I think that's where we'll set up.
Yeah, you don't even need instructions. Just to the west and kind of to the north. You'll find it.
Yeah,
just look for the giant
kind of
the giant flagpole, right? The giant flagpole, Brendan.
I know my flagpole.
Jack's Illustrated.
We will. You get your creaky chair out of here. We will we will post a map, which apparently doesn't matter to some people. We sent Joe and Sean the most meticulously made map to our tailgate spot ever, with like arrows and circles, and they ended up on the other side of the stadium somehow. I don't understand.
In the backyard.
I dropped a pin on Google Maps that would have took them right to our spot. I don't know what to say.
I don't know.
Apparently, maps aren't big at Rhodey.
Right.
Anyway, they teach you how to do a lot of things. Not read a map.
We're gonna yeah, we're gonna send a great map out for people to come find us.
I'll try to not wear my work clothes because I'm gonna feel like I'm going to work at a wastewater plant.
True. They might need you to work on the pumps to keep the sewage out of that place.
I mean, they're showing up every Saturday, right? Not a lot of them, but some. Oh, that was rude.
All right. So quickly, I do want to touch on the SDSU men's basketball. I think we will fire that up sooner than later. We may wait till the end of the football season, so we're not doubling up. But big win for them last night against a solid Bradley team. They had some big dudes. I don't know if you watched that game, but they had
7-1.
Like they were just rolling out 7-footer after 7-footer. It's like who? And I guess they get a bunch of guys from overseas, but man, it's a good thing we were shooting well from outside because they were tough down low. But we shot the ball lights out from 3-point in the first half. The return of Noah Friedel, that was awesome to see. Mm-hmm. He played really well. It was awesome to see our true freshman Mayo get out there. Zeke Mayo, he looked really good. Just all around, just good to see those guys get out and play. And there was a good crowd in Brookings for it. And like I said, they had a big win. I think they won by 15 or 20 or something like that.
Yeah, Baylor had his patented double-double before even a quarter of the way into the second half. Per protocol, he had like 11 rebounds like 3 minutes into the second half or something. It was ridiculous. Charlie Hustle was out there hustling, and it was a good win. I was only able to catch the second half, and that's where we didn't play quite as well. But it was nice. It seemed different with this team compared to last year, where if we got cold shooting the three, we like super ice cold. Like we didn't hit any threes in the second half. We were still able to be real successful maybe when our shots weren't falling, at still making points happen with ball movement and cutting to the hoop.
It was great to see our defense. That looked much improved. Dent, I think he had like 3 blocks that were just nasty. Like he was just wiping them away. And I mean, we were making it real tough on them shooting the ball. So, Big win for SDSU, and I don't know when their next game is. You'll have to
Friday. We play Alabama. Number
There we
14 in the country, Alabama, on Friday, and then Sunday we play Stephen F. Austin, the team of our Spring Clutch fan pickup one season edition, the Rev SFA. Ryan says if there's a recruit with a condiment last name, get him to SDSU. I couldn't agree more with the sauce.
I love that. Oh, yeah, with Kraft and Hines and now Mayo on the basketball team.
Oh my God. There we are. Look, he put up a map. Screenshot that. And if you're listening, let's read out the coordinates to you. That'll mean nothing.
Nah, we'll put it out on Twitter. Look for it there. But yeah, so SDSU men's basketball, watch that game Friday night. Number 14 Alabama. I didn't know that. And last time we played them, we should have beat them. We lost by 3. That was 2012. Oh my God, the years are flying by now.
Feel old yet?
Yep. That I feel like that was 3 years ago. That was a long time ago.
Was not. That's because the world ended back then, and now we're living in a fake world.
Simulation. Yeah. All right. Well, Brandon, Chad, you got anything before we go?
My chair wasn't squeaking; it was crying for help.
Oh, now I feel bad.
I mean,
oh no. Oh no.
I'm glad you can laugh at yourself. All right. Yeah, like Jim says, go big, go blue, go Jacks.
Go Jacks.
Jacks. That was by far